So again, we are live with Teresa Johnson, who is manager at the Fort Hood Fisher House, but also has the unique experience of being a resident and a volunteer at the Fisher House Foundation. So thank you so much for bearing with us through the technical difficulties and
No
joining us
worries.
to talk tonight.
No worries. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. So Teresa, how did you first learn about the Fisher House Foundation?
I learned about it through a personal friend whose husband was injured while he was deployed. And once he had came back from Walter Reed, they had mentioned that um, they had been put up in a Fisher House. And so while we were stationed at Fort Campbell at the time, and so when she mentioned the Fisher House, I had seen the sign all the time going to work, and I quickly, did my research on the internet and found out what they did, and that we were about to have one that was getting ready to open. And so that's how I learned about it.
Okay. And so you mentioned your husband when he was stationed in Fort Campbell. So
Right.
what does he do in the military? Isn't he a
So he's a medic, actually.
okay?
So they were deployed, and his friend and our neighbor, his brigade sergeant major, had actually 10 days boots on the ground, had got injured. So when they came in to his hospital, uh, he was quickly sent off to Walter Reed. And after 2 months of being taken care of at Walter Reed and his family staying at Fisher House, then they came back and kind of told us about the experience. And so I was pretty excited that the house that I drove past all the time um, was actually going to be a Fisher House. And so me and my three boys got involved because with my husband still being deployed, he still had about, I think, 9 months left in his deployment. And so I kind of became the house mom. I'd go and cook a pot of something, make the house smell good, meet up with the families and kind of, direct them where they needed to go since not being military, sometimes our world is a little crazy. So.
Right. So you mentioned that you started volunteering and kind of became the house mom.
Yep.
Can you describe a little bit of like what it was like experiencing kind of living with those soldiers and helping them out while they were at the Fisher House?
Right. So our manager, Vivian Wilson, had actually lived about 30 minutes off post. And so I have three boys and we live like 5 minutes from the house. So what I would do is during the day, I had a full-time job already. And so in between work, I would go over to the house, make sure, the refrigerator was stocked up with stuff. Because we always try to provide as much as possible for the families. Throw a pot of something that smelled good, and then, maybe rent some videos and do popcorn or, um, PlayStation was real big at the time. And so just tried to spend some time, had the boys, come with me all the time. And so we really spent a lot of time there, just with the families. A lot of them were maybe your 19 to 25-year-olds who didn't necessarily have, a wife and family. Their parents would come in. So really just kind of being there for them. And it was kind of cool because some of the soldiers actually had been through my husband's fob. And so as they talked about him, then I realized like, wow, my husband. So for me, it was a connection because I knew at that point it could be me. When I first saw the house coming up, I always thought it was going to be a distinguished visitors quarters, which is for officers.
Right.
Um, but when Sergeant Major got hurt, I quickly realized it was not just for officers; it was for enlisted as well. So um, it totally changed my mindset as about Fisher House and what its purpose and who would actually go there. So
Okay. So you really enjoyed being able to volunteer in Fisher House,
loved
and
it.
obviously that led to continued involvement. But for someone who hasn't or doesn't know much about Fisher House, what would be a good way for them to start volunteering or giving back?
Well, like I had shared with you before, a lot of it is getting involved and understanding what the Fisher House is, and that's a home away from home for families who have somebody going through a medical crisis, whether it's your service member or it could be a family member, it could be the wife, it could be high risk pregnancy, cancer, it could be your kids. So there's a lot of different reasons that people would end up in a Fisher House, and so I would just tell them to look in their local community, see what their Fisher House is and what type of clientele they have. But people can get involved by, cooking meals, coming out. We've had people do barbecues for the day, really just coming to um, meet the families, talk with the families. A lot of them have spent so much time being patients that people forget that they were a person, a soldier, a service member before they got injured. And a lot of times they just want to talk to somebody about work. They want to talk about their kids. They want to talk about how, because they don't want to talk about medical. They do that all day long. So they just want to still feel part of our military community. So it's always fun to have, the groups come in and do that and just kind of talk story with them. So,
Right. So, there's a lot that they can do without, necessarily donating money or anything, but really just
right.
giving back and kind of making a personal connection and being there for them.
Right. So we, they want to, money is great, and we never say no because it is a public-private donation. So that's how we operate. CFC is, I think, the big part for most people to collect the money, but a lot of it too is like maybe they can do baskets. I know we have a lot of churches or a lot of scouts. They'll, especially during the holidays, but even more so not during the holidays because people forget
Hmm.
about them.
Right.
Maybe do like a Redbox movie gift certificate, popcorn and soda or something, a family game night basket. You know, I always ask people if they want to do like movie tickets and stuff like that because sometimes our families are able to actually leave the Fisher House and go do something, get away. So it's nice if they can just go get a gift card, go to a restaurant or go to a movie, go bowling. I know one time we had a group that sponsored a bowling, and so like a lot of our residents were able to go and just kind of get out of Fisher House for a little bit. So
Yeah,
that was kind of cool too.
that's awesome. So, obviously, from volunteering, can you describe your transition into taking a more involved role with Fisher House Foundation?
Yes. So while my husband was deployed for that year while Fisher House was open, we went ahead and, I was there all the time, every day. If families came in at night. And then as soon as he got back, we actually got orders to go to Hawaii, which they had two Fisher houses there. So as soon as I got there, I, knocked on the door, got involved and volunteered. And then after 4 months, I actually was blessed with the position to be the manager. So it was totally different experience because we didn't have your combat wounded. It was more of your, your veterans and stuff like that, and Guard and Reserve from Guam, American Samoa, and throughout the whole Pacific. And so I learned quickly that it was, you know, so many more reasons that people could stay at a Fisher House. So I managed the one in Hawaii for 7 years. In 2012, my son was getting ready for his first deployment, and then he got back in February 2013. 3 months later, we had my husband PCS to Fort Hood, and I was still in Hawaii, so I came here. I think 2 days after I got here, I got a text message that my son, who was stationed in Germany, had been in a car accident, and
Mhm.
so I quickly tried to figure out how to get to Germany to be with him, and all the avenues that should have worked did not. And so my next phone call was actually to the Fisher House Foundation. Like I said, Blake grew up as a volunteer in Fisher House I think he started when he was like in 8th grade, freshman year. And now here he is in Germany in the hospital, and Fisher House was there for us. So
Yeah, that's incredible. So, um, from going from trying to go through the military channels to get to see your son, and then you then turn to Fisher House, how did they fly you over there?
So they have a program called the Hero Miles program, and what it is the American public who travel on a regular basis anyway. Whenever you fly, if you sign up for your local, your selected airline, you get your airline miles. But a lot of us will sign up and never really collect enough points, so they can actually donate those points to the Fisher House at fisherhouse.org. And they just click on a button that says "Donate Hero Miles." And the cool thing about it is if you or I travel and we never, travel fast enough to collect all our points, they expire. I think probably like maybe 18 months.
Right.
But people can donate them to the Fish House Foundation and they never expire. So it's like a big pot of free miles. And it was because of that donation from people who are already traveling, didn't have to come out of pocket, that families like me were able to get a ticket over, to Germany overnight, basically. And it wasn't just me. I took my younger son with me, so that probably would have been about $7,000 had I needed to pay for it out of my own pocket. So there's no way without the help of the Fisher House and the donated airline miles I would have ever been by my son's side. And we've continued to use that program through his recovery. It's not a
Mm-hmm.
one-time program.
Because then he had to fly back to America, isn't that correct?
Correct. So he actually flew back, and they had to actually fly him first class because of his injury. His leg was like wired straight, so he couldn't sit in the regular chair. So he came back here, had to have some more medical treatment assessment, and then he was actually sent to Walter Reed for good. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's where he's actually at now. He just medically retired. But in the process, as he was going through his treatment, the foundation, every time he'd have surgery, they would actually fly me from either Hawaii or Texas or wherever I ended up being, back and forth. And so I actually left Hawaii and went into the Walter Reed Fisher House as mom. I stayed there with him for 3 months, and then his older brother stayed for another 6 months as a resident of Fisher House. So it's been an amazing program.
Hmm.
And now they not only help our service members and their families as soon as they get through with their initial treatment, they've actually expanded and have partnered with the DoD as well as the Invictus Games. And so as our service members are becoming athletes with the adaptive sports, they've been able to use their Hotel for Heroes program, which is similar to the Hero Miles.
Right.
Only when people stay at certain hotels that we partnered with, they can donate those points as well. And so the families were able to have 2 family members per athlete to go out there and be by the athlete's side as they're going through the fun part of the recovery, and that's actually getting back to their new normal.
Hmm.
So we were able to do that last year as he was with the Warrior Games, and then this year again we'll be probably out there. So.
Right, and that's something Fisher House has kind of taken up as an additional charge, right? Is
Absolutely.
Not just the healing during the initial process, but getting back to normal.
Right, absolutely. There's so many athletes that are probably never would have imagined. Like, it's been almost 3 years for my son. May will be 3 years, and 3 years ago, we really didn't know if he'd ever even walk again. So being able to see him out there swimming and cycling and doing all these adaptive sports, amazing. Same with the amputees and stuff that they have out there. I mean, so many of these service members, are in almost a better place in their altered state. So, I mean, they really being able to have the support of, the foundation and the other charities that really work have been life-saving. I can definitely tell you for a lot of them.
That's awesome. So kind of backtracking a little bit, throughout your time as both a volunteer and a manager, I'm sure you've touched a lot of lives. Do you still keep in touch with some of the families that you've worked with through the Fisher House?
I do actually. I'm on a regular basis with a lot of the families. Facebook and social media is a big thing for all of us.
Right.
And so during my 7 years in Hawaii, I met a lot of families that were, in other countries, Guam, Samoa, Korea, Japan. And so as we've all kind of moved on, everybody stayed in touch. I actually just had an opportunity to go to Kashrai for an event that I do, remembering or honoring fallen service members. And so I was returning a saber. And on my way back through, I stopped in Guam, and one of my residents, one of my family, picked me up and surprised me. And there was about 20 other families that I had been stationed with in Hawaii that had stayed through our Fisher House. And we all met up for dinner. And so it was really cool to be able to do that. And a lot of them still call me. So
yeah, that's incredible.
You really do become family. Once you've been in a Fisher House, you're family for life. And that's just part of our whole military world anyway.
For sure. So I guess we have one last question for you. What does, with everything you've experienced, volunteer, manager, and a resident, obviously, what does the Fisher House really mean to you?
For me, it meant being there when my son needed me most. There's nothing worse than a parent who gets that phone call that your child is injured and you can't be by their side. So for me, knowing that I've been able to work at the Fisher House, not just on a personal level, but professionally, and knowing that how important it was for me, I know what it is to the other families. And when I got here to the Fort Hood, was 4 days before we had the shooting, and immediately I knew, that we're going to need help and all that kind of stuff. And so my first phone call again was back to the foundation and talked to Tish. And I was like, look, we got families, we got, a lot of casualties and stuff like that. And these families are going to want to be there. And it's almost instantaneous, as instantaneous as it can get within hours. I mean, they worked nonstop, made sure that we were coordinating flights, because the military does provide up to 3 family members, but a family of 5 is going to end up paying those extra 2 tickets. So I worked with her, and I want to say by the time we'd gotten done with everything. There was 28 flights that we had coordinated through the Fisher House Foundation. And again, on a regular basis, if we're full, they always help us with the rooms and stuff. So knowing that whatever I need to help take care of my families at any Fisher House I'm at, that's, I mean, peace of mind. It's amazing group of people at the foundation, and all the managers at the Fisher Houses are all, I mean, it's our lifestyle. I tell people it's not my job, it's my lifestyle.
Right.
And once you walk into Fisher House, you'll understand why, because, I mean, you have no choice but to get sucked into the love, and they're going to make you love. You're part of the family. So, but yeah, the staff at the foundation is absolutely amazing. And, with the majority of them being military associated, we all know it could be us. And that's always kind of my mantra, is it could be me. And now I can say it was me. Thanks to my child.
Well, I'm really glad, Fisher House was there for you, and, really glad you've been able to give back so much. And I know, obviously, all the families that you've touched are really appreciative of everything that you have done for the foundation. So on behalf of them, I want to thank you and for the Fisher House Foundation. It's really incredible.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I think that's it for today. Thank you so much for talking with us, and, again, for everything you've done.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being part of helping us spread the message for what Fisher House does, because if people don't know, we can't help them. So thank you for that.
Of course. Thanks again, Teresa.
Okay, have a good night.
Bye.